hello, regular Drews.
Hi, everyone.
Here we are, episode 99, which is kind
Ooh.
of crazy. We're one away
Right?
from 100, which is exciting. And today we are going to be discussing another Nancy Drew file. This one, number 23, Sinister Paradise.
Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
This book was confusing as heck. In general, I liked it. I think it was exciting.
Yeah.
I feel like Nancy did a lot of investigating in this book.
Mm-hmm.
She and the entire Drew crew were, incredibly competent, which was kind of, I don't know. It was nice to read, but it was also kind of ridiculous to read because it was these are supposed to be 18-year-olds and they're acting like international, espionage, experts.
Right.
But it was cool, but it was just so kind of convoluted. There were so many different, and maybe it was just part of it is just about business and finance, and I just I'm not interested in that. It was the opposite of my interests. So it was just hard to follow. I'm I don't care how much money this is.
Yeah.
I don't care who owns the bank and who this real estate invests. I don't care. I don't care. And unfortunately, that was kind of the plot of the book. So
No one said there would be math. I don't like math. Not that there were specific numbers, but finance, like you said, economics and finance, that's just math in disguise. And we don't do that here. I don't.
Yeah.
It was too much of the specifics on how economics works within this bank and all the investments and everything.
Right. Yeah, I'm not a personal finance girly.
No.
I just can't get there. My brain just turns off the minute someone starts talking about money, and it's an actual problem. It's a legitimate problem that I have, but it was just not helpful in this particular circumstance. I just couldn't do a great job comprehending what was being told to me. But you know what? That's okay. We're going to struggle through that together, regular Drew, as much as we're struggling through everything together right now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So yeah. Oh, okay. So I don't want to talk too soon about this, but I just have to say the ending to this Files book is probably the craziest, most intense, high octane ending to any book. Any book I've ever read.
Yeah. Not Nancy Drew book, just any book.
Definitely Nancy Drew book, but maybe any book I've ever read. Legitimately, it almost seriously, this is not I'm not being metaphoric when I say this. It's a Charlie's Angels ending.
Right.
So
yeah, the ending was so exciting. It definitely made up for the more boring parts earlier in the book. Definitely. There was a lot going on. It's really cool.
But so if you're interested in helicopters to wet your whistle at all, you should read this book just for the ending because it was really fun and funny to read.
Yeah.
And exciting. So, but yeah.
Should we talk about the cover?
Sure. Okay. I think I told you this before, Corey. I don't know if we recorded this or not, but this I think is the most color coordinated Nancy Drew Files cover I've ever seen.
Yes, yeah.
It's pink and blue. Nancy is on the cover in like a white and pink floral dress. She looks gorgeous. In the background is this guy holding a surfboard, which is pink and white. And his outfit, he's wearing like this yellow half open shirt and some like white swim trunks or whatever. He's on a beach. And then in the background of that is a volcano. And just all of the colors, like the colors on her dress, the colors on the surfboard, the colors on his shirt match with like the lettering at the top, because we have our Nancy Drew in pink and then that blue strip which has the files and the case number on it. And it's just really, even the Sinister Paradise text, which is primarily pink, has yellow in it, which accents off of the guy's shirt. Like it's just
and the lava.
Yeah, and the lava.
Perfect.
it's truly masterpiece in like color coordinating. So props. I don't know who did this cover.
I think it's James Mathus.
Okay.
I want to say.
Well done. Snaps for you, James. Also, yeah. Oh, yeah. I see that now.
Oh, sorry. No, Jim. Mathus.
Jim.
James might be his full name, but yeah.
I see that. Yeah, because great work. Also, pink and blue and yellow is just such a pleasing color combination in general. Like it
really is.
It's really gorgeous to look at. Also, yeah, like
Nancy looks great.
Nancy looks great. Very Hawaii vibes. Like
yes.
Love the whole like beach volcano combination background we have going on. So love that.
Yeah. Who is this man? Is he just the random surfer that Nancy talks to briefly? Ned?
I wonder if it's supposed to be Ned.
Okay.
Because there's like no other guy really, like guy main character.
Mm-hmm. Certainly not their age, yeah.
Right. And with the dark hair, it kind of seems like it might be Ned. He's mostly Nancy's kind of sidekick in this. I mean, Bess and George are also there, but Ned is usually the one who's like with her most of the time, I feel like. So I can't think of anybody else it would be except for Ned. And I have to say, he's pretty cute in this cover. So
I think it's Ned then. Let's just call him Ned.
Let's call it Ned. Ned girlies, get excited. Go look at the cover of this. Enjoy a really cute representation.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Of
I
your
like
fave.
It.
So yeah. Okay, 3 words.
Finance, math.
Math.
Well, really, yeah, I see rich people problems on here.
Yes.
That's really what it is, honestly. It's just rich people who are too concerned about their own wealth and keeping their own wealth, regardless of what it means for everyone else. Yeah.
That's another reason why it was really hard to read. It was like, oh, okay, like we get it. You're really, really, really rich. I understand. And like all of them are kind of awful because of it, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely like money problems, I guess rich people problems is really what it is. I thought it was just funny, teenagers having their pilot's license.
Yes.
That's not really 3 words. I don't know how we can fit that into 3 words, but
some of the believability of this was maybe not the most grounded, like with the pilot's license thing. Also with the police relationship, there's a lot of just like, oh, yes, ma'am, Nancy, we will defer to you, whatever you say, young lady. Yeah. Right. That was kind of really unbelievable as well. I don't know. A lot of the
maybe
elements
just
of this,
like unrealistic.
Yeah.
We can make one of the words. Unrealistic, math, and rich people problems.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
That's it. Yep.
That's it. That's this book. Alrighty. Shall we jump in, Corey?
Sure. Let's do it. Yeah.
So to start, Nancy, Ned, Bess, and George are all in Hawaii together. They are currently visiting Alice Faulkner's estate, right? Because she doesn't just have a house because she's so rich. She has an estate in Hawaii. Just want to point that out to everyone. And Alice is like an old family friend of the Drews. So she called Nancy just a few days ago when her 16-year-old granddaughter, Lisa, went missing. Alice believes that Lisa ran away, but Alice is also the controlling partner of this company called Windward Bancorp, which owns a bank called Windward Fidelity, which is like a $900 million company or something. So Alice is really rich. She's really, 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 really rich. And she has a lot of enemies. So she's like kind of worried about the situation, right? She explains to Nancy that on Friday, Lisa was meant to go to this bank, Windward Fidelity, their bank, their family's bank, to pick up some traveler's checks for her mother, Diana. Now, Diana is an artist and has been planning this art exhibition on Maui, but she's Alice's daughter, obviously, and they have not been on good terms, Alice and Diana, since Alice's husband died a few years ago. And apparently, this isn't really important, but he was some other rich guy and he bought a bunch of real estate in Hawaii, and that's why they're so rich. Like,
lovely.
That's pretty much it. So that's really great, not problematic at all.
No.
White people buying Native Hawaiian land out from under them. And that's not an issue. I'm being sarcastic. It's a big issue. Yeah, just wanted to add that in there so that everybody's really clear on how these people have their money. Okay? Anyway, so Lisa did go to the bank to pick up these checks, but instead of getting the checks out of her mother's safety deposit box, she instead took her mother's diamonds and $400,000 worth of bearer bonds, which, I'm sorry, is icon behavior.
Right.
Like, I support women's rights and wrongs here. Yes. I love Lisa for this, and we can talk about that later, too. So the bank realized quickly what had happened and called Lisa's stepfather, or ex-stepfather, Ross Rafferty, who is Diana's ex-husband. And he's also the CEO of this bank, Windward, or not the bank. Gosh, see, this is why it's so confusing. There are two different companies.
There's the bank, and then there's the corporation that own the bank, and they're both called Windward.
Yes.
Which, is confusing.
He is the CEO of Windward Bancorp, which is the company that owns the bank.
Yes.
So when he found this out, he sent security to the airport to try to stop Lisa from leaving Hawaii, but Lisa never showed up at the airport and she still has not been found. Apparently, Ross refused to call the police, thinking that, this would damage his reputation somehow if word were to get out about this. And Alice is also hesitant to call the police because she doesn't want word to get out that Lisa is wandering around in Hawaii somewhere with $400,000 worth of untraceable bearer bonds, right? That is a legitimate concern. Yeah. So Alice wants Nancy to find her so that Alice can file for custody to take Lisa back to Texas, because Alice is not satisfied with how Lisa has been raised by Diana, right? Obviously they're estranged, so she wants custody of Lisa. And she thinks that for some reason she can provide a more stable life for her than what she's had so far. We can talk about that later too. So Nancy and friends hop into their rental car to head back into Honolulu. Unfortunately, as they are driving down the winding roads in Alice's fancy neighborhood, their car's brakes go out. The car is speeding so fast down this road, but Nancy, who has the driving skills of Annie Walker in Covert Affairs, I swear to God, is able to shift the car into a lower gear and slow down enough that she can pull the e-brake and whip the car around in this embankment so that its own momentum stops it.
Pretty clever.
I mean, way to go, Nancy, but wow. The unbelievability starts in chapter 1, you guys.
Right.
So unfortunately, she breaks the axle on the car, pulling this stunt, so Ned has to stay with the car while the girls walk back to the marina, where they are staying on Mrs. Faulkner's yacht, by the way. She also has a yacht that they're staying on. They don't have to stoop so low as to stay in her palatial mansion. They get to stay on her yacht at the marina. Golly.
More privacy out there.
Right. So they're going to go back there to call tow truck for Ned. So they do that, and afterwards, Nancy then has to go to the rental car office to submit an accident report, and so she takes George with her to go do this. They get to the rental desk at the airport, but the clerk says that they have no car rented out to a Nancy Drew. And Nancy was like, no, you do. I have the rental agreement right here. I definitely rented a car from you this morning. And so they figure this out, and it turns out that, yes, she did rent this car, but it wasn't actually in her name. Turns out this rental car place, and this is complicated, so forgive me if I stumble over this. This rental
convoluted
car
is what
place,
it is. Yeah.
Yes, sometimes has agreements with local businesses to hold rental cars exclusively for the business's use. So one of these companies had called to have one of their cars put on hold for Nancy. The clerk actually remembers this interaction and remembers that it was a woman, but she didn't give a name. But the company that she was from was called the Malahini Corporation. And she asked that this specific car that Nancy was using be reserved for Nancy. Obviously, this is sus AF. clearly this car had some kind of issue. The brakes went out. So if a company was asking for this specific car to be reserved for Nancy, they're probably responsible for this accident, right?
Right.
So Nancy then asks a really smart question, which I was honestly super impressed by, and I would not have thought to ask this. She asks if the rental car company owns the vehicles. And the clerk says, no, they don't. They actually lease these vehicles out from local car dealerships. So Nancy asks the name of the dealership that the car came from and learns that it's this place called Smiling Owls. While at the airport, Nancy gets a call from Ned, who tells her he's at the gas station, and the car got towed and everything fine. But the tow company checked the car's brakes and said they were as bald as an eagle. So Nancy is pissed. She's really frustrated, and she's going to go give this Smiling Owl character a piece of her mind, right? So she takes George, and they go pick up Ned, and they head to this Smiling Owl's car dealership. They meet Al. He's like a greasy used car salesman kind of guy. And when they accuse him of leasing a faulty car to this car rental place, he clams up and he won't say anything. But Nancy threatens to go to the Department of Transportation, which loosens his lips. And he says apparently he got a telegram, which, LOL, telegram, from the Malahini Corporation offering to sell him this specific car at half price, provided that he would turn around and immediately lease it to the rental car place the following day. And he'd never even heard of the Malahini Corporation before, but the deal was too good, so he just did it. And obviously he did not have time to check the car for any issues before he leased it out to the rental place. So obviously he's hugely liable for this accident that Nancy had. So he's like, oh, I'll make it up to you. You can rent any brand new car for me that you want, Miss Drew. And Nancy is like, for free, right? And so she, Ned, and George drive off the lot in their brand new car provided by Smiling Owl, and they head back to the marina, to their yacht. But after all this, it's pretty clear that the Malahini Corporation, whoever they are, have it out for Nancy for some reason. They must have known she was going to come to the island to work for Alice Faulkner, so that now they're going to have to really watch their backs and be extra careful because somebody knows they're here and they don't mean well.
How did the corporation know that the car was faulty when
they sold it to Smiling
him?
Owl?
That's
yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes. They're the ones who sabotaged the car, sold it to Smiling Owl, and on half price under the agreement that he would immediately lease it out. And then they called the car rental place and were like, hey, this car that you have just leased, you need to put that on hold for Nancy Drew.
How did he... did the car just show up in his lot and he received a telegram that was like, you need to buy this car from me, Smiling Owl?
I don't know.
How did he never meet anyone from the corporation?
I mean, I guess the telegram probably maybe included a phone number or something. They called and he wired money and then the car was delivered, maybe. That's all
weird.
That I can
But
guess.
Delivered by who?
But
you still should have seen a physical human being at some point, I feel like, during this whole arrangement. Anyway. It's not important. So at this point, Nancy and Ned decide that it's time to go meet Diana, who is Lisa's mother. So they go to her apartment and are instantly struck by how just unconcerned Diana is for Lisa, and just how kind of lackadaisical she seems to be about all of this. It just doesn't really seem to be priority for her. She is actually an artist and she has an art exhibition going on right now, and she seems to be more frustrated that Lisa's disappearance means that she has to miss this exhibition. And she also doesn't really seem to be able to answer any of Nancy's questions about Lisa's life or her interests or her friends or really anything like that. Yeah, and Nancy keeps commenting to herself, I'm so lucky for Carson, because imagine if I had a terrible parent like this. This woman is awful. Yeah, so Nancy asks, hey, can I see Lisa's room? Because maybe that'll give me some more insight into her. So she goes into Lisa's room, and for the most part seems like a normal bedroom, but she does see a model helicopter hanging from the ceiling in the bedroom. And there's also some photos of Lisa and some friends in front of the same type of helicopter. So Nancy asks about it, and it turns out that Lisa is like really interested in flying and has actually been taking some lessons recently, learning how to fly helicopters. And then Nancy also finds a notepad on Lisa's desk, and the top page has some like, it's not actually written on, but of course, you know, if you write hard enough on a notebook paper and then take the next page, you can kind of see the indentation on the next page. And she can make out sort of part of what looks like an address. So the top line just says Miss MI, like it's like maybe a longer name or something that starts with MI. And then the next line says 1276 PR, like it's a cut off street name maybe. And then the last line says San Fra, like it's San Francisco, maybe, cut off. But then as she's kind of examining this, she notices that outside the window, there is a man in a Hawaiian shirt staring up at Lisa's window, like watching Nancy. So she yells to Ned to come up and look. But at this time, Diana also comes and like runs and looks out the window. And I guess this like scares the man off because he sees that they've noticed him. So he just takes off running. And he ends up getting away. But Nancy is really, really concerned about this, obviously. Like, that's too much of a coincidence that some man is like staking out Lisa's bedroom. So first, this like situation with the car and this random company getting involved with that. And then now, obviously, this like stalking or whatever looks less and less like a simple runaway situation. It looks like maybe something worse could have happened here. We start explaining this to Diana, and Nancy encourages her to call the police, but Diana just starts crying, breaks down in tears. She's really upset, obviously. So obviously we know that she cares a little bit here. It just wasn't showing that at first. Oh my gosh, this next scene is so funny. So
I know. It's the best part of the whole book, right? This next scene. Yes.
So the next day, Nancy, Ned, Bess, and George all go to Lisa's high school to see if they can't find out any information there. But we're not just going to ask around. We are going to go undercover as high school students. So they've each given themselves like their own assignment for how they're going to go about like getting information from Lisa's classmates. Bess is going to try to head down to the office to sneak into Lisa's file, see if there's any information there. Ned is going to try to buddy up with the janitorial staff to see if maybe they know anything. And then George and Nancy are both going to pose as brand new students to the school, like transfer students, and just try to talk to people. So Nancy manages to actually find out that Lisa's best friend is a girl named Dawn, and she's able to find Dawn and goes to her homeroom to talk with her. And Nancy like knows that Dawn and Lisa were interested in the helicopters, obviously. So she starts asking her about the helicopters. And so Dawn starts telling Nancy about Lisa. So we learn that Lisa and Dawn are actually both part of this local flying club, and Lisa already has her pilot's license.
Okay, side note, for sure, when I read this, I was like, oh, she's flying her own plane out of Hawaii.
Right, yeah.
I was like, she doesn't have to fly a commercial flight out of Hawaii. She's got her pilot's license. She's part of a flying club. She's going to go steal a plane and fly to San Francisco. Why are we all being so dumb right now? But that doesn't happen. So I was sad.
She's got $400,000 and a pilot's license.
She's got $400,000, a pilot's license. Like, this girl can go anywhere she wants to. Anywhere she wants to.
She can figure it out.
Yeah. So jealous of her.
Dawn also tells us that Lisa refers to her mom as Picasso. And obviously they're not close, as we've pretty much already learned. We also learned that Diana often sends Lisa away, and the relationship has actually gotten even worse since Diana's most recent divorce. But yes, also, we learn that Lisa and Dawn have another friend who was their friend since like middle school or whatever, but she moved away recently. Actually, her name is Michelle, and she's now she lives in San Francisco.
Oh.
So that address, Miss Me, whatever, that must be Miss Michelle in San Francisco. So Nancy asks if they're still close, if they've kept in touch since Michelle moved away. And Dawn tells us that, yes, actually they write letters pretty much every week. And Lisa really wanted to go visit her at some point. Or I think Michelle had actually invited them to come visit at some point or something like that. They haven't actually been, but they had kind of talked about wanting to go. So at this point, Nancy meets back up with Ned and Bess in the hallway, and Bess tells us that she was actually able to sneak into the principal's office to look at Lisa's file, but really only learned her locker number. She was pretending to be a transfer student from some school in North Dakota or something, and even gave a fake name. And the secretary went out of the room to check Bess's file or call the old school or something to get her documents sorted out for transferring. It was at that point that Bess took the opportunity to sneak into the principal's office. But now the secretary has returned and is calling over the intercom for whatever Bess's fake name that she gave was. And so now Bess has to go run and hide in the car because somebody's going to come looking for her. Basically, it's really funny. This is actually a really good scene. Mm-hmm. But now that we know Lisa's locker number, Nancy is going to go pick the lock, obviously. And inside, we find an airline brochure with flight times and everything, an itinerary. And we see that she has circled one from Honolulu to San Francisco, leaving yesterday or whenever she was supposed to have left town. But at this point, some hand reaches out and grabs Nancy's wrist and asks what she is doing here. And she turns, and there's actually two men standing next to her. And it turns out they are cops. I don't know if they're the school police officers or if they were just here anyway. I don't know.
No, they are part of the Honolulu Police Department.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, because they're here looking into information about Lisa's disappearance.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so...
yeah.
So it's these two police partners or whatever that are out looking for Lisa, and Nancy tells them that she's basically there looking for Lisa and tells them a little bit of what she knows about her disappearance. And we learn that basically nobody called them about Lisa. So it's not that Diana finally got her senses together and called while we were at the school. Just word on the street is that Lisa is running around town trying to sell her diamonds.
Yeah.
And they wanted to track her down at school and stake out her locker to see if she will show up here.
Yep.
Very, very good police work. Very good investigative skills here. And so, yeah, I guess at this point, the police are just so ready to just trust Nancy and be deferential to her at any point in this book.
It's so funny, though, too, because, literally Nancy is oh, I'm, a private detective. I'm here investigating this for, her grandmother or whatever. And they're oh, well, private detectives have to register with the police department when they come into town. And Nancy's well, I'm not a licensed private investigator. I'm just an amateur detective. And he was oh, wait, you said your name's Nancy Drew. I've heard of you. You cracked this case up in some, I don't know, some case up north, didn't you? Mm-hmm. And she was oh, yeah, that was me. He was you did great work. We'll happily help you, Nancy. Yeah. It's oh my God.
It's just that easy. Just that easy.
Wild.
Oh my gosh. So Nancy starts asking them for their advice pretty much at this point. They're going to assist her with the investigation from now on, not the other way around. Yeah. And she's hey guys, where would a teen around here go to fence some diamonds? And the cops are telling her about some guy named Boomer who likes to hang out at the local mall. And he is... maybe paranoid is the right word here. He's really good at spotting police officers from a mile away and will not take risks and will not talk to anybody that he doesn't already trust or whatever. So Nancy's well, that's not a problem for me because I'm not a cop. So they he won't know that I'm trying to get information out of him. So the Drew crew goes over to the mall and Nancy tells Bess to go buy her some jewelry. And Bess is on it. I got this. That's the easiest job ever. Got it. And so they all kind of separate to keep an eye out for this Boomer guy. Nancy finds him and she goes up to him and is hey, I've got this stolen jewelry. What kind of offer would you, or what kind of deal could we make for this jewelry? And he's oh, yeah, I'll talk to you, but meet me in the parking garage in 10 minutes or whatever. We can't do this here. So she goes up to the parking garage to wait for him. And when he arrives, he starts explaining kind of how he's going to orchestrate the sale. But as he's talking, Nancy notices that guy that was snooping around Lisa's apartment or her bedroom window or whatever. He's here in the parking garage. And Nancy notices him just kind of lingering over by like the stairwell. And Nancy is like, she starts to get a little bit like anxious, I think. And I think Boomer kind of picks up on it because he's like, oh, that's a cop. I know he's a cop. We need to get out of here. And then he kind of turns on Nancy. Like she says something to him and he's like, wait a minute. You're working with him too, aren't you? You must be a cop as well. I figured it out. And he just like immediately accuses Nancy of trying to bust him and pulls a gun out on her. Mm-hmm. And then he sees the other guy in the stairwell and grabs Nancy around the neck and is starting to like threatens to shoot her unless the other man backs away and just leaves the scene.
So obviously whoever that guy is in the Hawaiian shirt who's watching Lisa's window is not with Nancy. And so he just runs off, right? He doesn't care.
Yeah.
And Boomer like goes to shoot him as he's running away. And Nancy takes this opportunity to throw her head back, smash Boomer in the face, judo chops his ribs.
Yeah.
And then disarms him. Like,
yay!
Gun goes flying under the car. Boomer just starts to run, which I find hilarious. It's like you're like this 18-year-old girl like beat you up and you just run. Anyway, it's just a funny mental image. And Nancy and Ned, who is like nearby watching, run after him. Ned gets taken out by a trash can lid. But Nancy is able to keep up with him and follows Boomer all the way into the mall and is able to do a running tackle and take him down to the ground.
Let's go, Nancy.
Seriously.
This is such a good mental image.
This is what I'm saying. Nancy is like the most competent like person in this book. This is the most competent Nancy I've ever read.
Right?
So like,
wild. Just wait for the end. Oh my gosh.
I know. Boomer does like go to fight back, but Nancy does another judo kick to his chin and he just like surrenders. He's like, I give up. I'm sorry. Which I find so hilarious. And Nancy explains to him, she's like, dude, I'm not even a cop. Like, calm down. It's fine. I can't arrest you. But you better answer my questions, dude. And she shows him a picture of Lisa, and he does end up admitting that he has met her before and that apparently she tried to sell him some diamonds on the boardwalk, but he thought that the sale was fishy, and so he ended up following Lisa afterwards, like not buying the diamonds, and just followed her afterwards. And apparently she went to some apartment building called the Kale Apartments. And then at this point, mall security shows up and Nancy is like, arrest that guy. He just threatened me with a gun in the parking garage. Which I thought was like also like hashtag brutal of Nancy. Right? It was like, you just beaten the crap out of this guy and you're like, I'm not a cop. But then you just like turn him over to the mall cops, which I just thought was too good. Too good.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, right, by the way, while all this is happening, George hasn't been here. It's just been Bess and Ned with Nancy at the mall. George is actually at the bank right now trying to like investigate there while they did this whole Boomer plot thing. So Nancy and Ned are gonna now, and Bess are now gonna head to the bank to go meet back up with George. Oh my God, I forgot about this part. Okay, so as they're driving to the bank, they run into some like road work happening where explosives are being used. And as they're passing by this road work, some kind of like alarm starts sounding. Like some like frantic construction worker starts like motioning crazy to Nancy. And so she like backs up her car. And she does that in time to avoid an explosion that goes off down a nearby manhole. This angry construction worker then comes over and blames Nancy for either having her radio on or having like a detonator in her car to set off this explosion, which, listen, this book was published in 1988. Yeah, 1988. And I never knew that like apparently there was like a sign nearby that was like, turn off your radios, explosives are being used. Mm-hmm. Was that a thing? Could you trigger explosions with your car radio in the 80s?
I've never heard of that before. I don't doubt it. I've definitely heard of like lots of radio signals being used, and so for safety purposes you should turn off your stuff around sites like this. I didn't know that's why.
That just seems like wildly not okay. Like, maybe don't use like a radio wave detonator if like it's possible, like other radio waves can interfere. Like, just use a plunger. I don't understand this. We talked about this before, I feel like, with the literally the last one, Datron Parade, because they were gonna demolish that building. I'm like, if you can't turn it off, or if someone else can set it off, why are you not just using a plunger? Why are you not just using a plunger?
Seems way too easy to set it off. Like, way too like ripe for disaster to happen this way.
Like, mystery sabotage scenario or not. Like, if some passing motorist with the radio on can set off this bomb, you need to figure out a different way. You figure out a different way.
So, you know, there's so many people out there too selfish to turn their radio off.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
But anyway, Nancy is like, or apparently he's angry because apparently only someone with a radio set to a certain frequency who is near enough could have made this explosion happen. And Nancy tells this guy and a cop who is also like shown up at this point that, like, I mean, I didn't do anything purposefully, but this is a rental car and it's possible that someone else left a detonator in it and I wouldn't know about it. Like, I've never even looked in the trunk of this car, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they all look around the car together, and sure enough, Ned finds a little electronic device under his seat. The cop looks at it and says that it's some kind of like listening device. So it's like a bug that someone has planted in this car, and it probably wasn't actually meant to intentionally set off this bomb, just like to spy on them. Which is just like crazy to me. It still did the job, right? But so since Nancy's clearly not at fault, the cop gives them back the bug and lets them go. And so Nancy is like, well, I wonder who planted this in our car. But really it could have been anyone, because apparently they didn't lock the car doors when they parked it at the marina last night, which is like, who doesn't lock their car door? Like, Nancy Drew. Nancy Drew.
Mm-hmm.
Get it together, girl. Like, how can you be so wildly competent and like absolutely winning over every single cop you meet, having the bad guys bow down before you, and you don't remember to lock your car door? These two things don't meet. They don't make sense together.
All the car-related sabotage that you've experienced recently, and you don't think to lock your car?
My God.
Must have been the 80s. Something in the air. Who knows? What was the attitude there?
Cars still got stolen in the 80s. Like,
of course.
I don't know. I don't get it. But whatever. So anyway, they get to the bank and they go inside the bank and they ask if they can speak to, Mr. Ross Rafferty, right? He's Lisa's ex-stepdad and the CEO of Woodward Bancorp, which is the company that owns the bank. George is apparently like already upstairs with him right now. So someone calls him up and says he'll be right down. He does come down the stairs with several burly security men, and he points at Nancy and her friends and says, "That's them. Place those kids under arrest." Turns out he already knows who they are and that they're investigating Lisa's disappearance for Alice Faulkner, but he just like thinks that all private detectives are con artists and that they're taking advantage of Alice, and so he wants them arrested. But he's really just like grandstanding, and Nancy identifies this pretty quickly and she calls him on it and she says, well, like, I'd hate to tell Alice that you were uncooperative in our investigation, and why don't you give her a call, right? Because obviously Alice is the controlling partner of Woodward Bancorp, so Rafferty is like beholden to her, right? And so he does call her and afterwards immediately changes his tune, and Nancy and her friends are let go, and he says he'll do anything he can do to help Nancy's investigation. Ugh, what a horrible guy. So she has to go see the safety deposit box room, and she's shown there and meets the bank president, who's Mr. Kaimansaki. She learns that only Lisa, Diana, and Alice would have had access to Diana's safety deposit box, as well as the bank's officers, who is, of course, Mr. Kaimansaki, Mr. Rafferty, and the bank's vice president, whose name is Amy Sorensen, and they haven't met her. She's not there. But yeah, after that, Nancy and friends just head to the Calais apartment building to try to see if they can find Lisa there. When they get there, she sends Bess and George to distract the desk clerk while she and Ned check out the desk. They clearly see on I guess an open logbook or something that apartment 232 is being rented to an L. Faulkner. So this is probably Lisa using her mother's maiden name. And so they head up to this apartment and knock, but it's empty. They go in and there's literally not a single piece of furniture. There is not a piece of trash in this apartment. It even looks like the floors have been waxed. There's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
And Nancy immediately realizes that, she said the name of Kale Apartments in the car when it was bugged. So she thinks that someone either tipped Lisa off and she left, or more scarily, someone came here after hearing Nancy say that and took Lisa away forcefully. There is actually one thing left in the apartment, though, and that is a curtain rod. And Nancy goes over to it and takes it down and sees that the end pieces unscrew and that the rod is hollow. So she unscrews it and looks inside and finds a bearer bond worth $50,000.
Ooh.
So this has to be one of the bonds that Lisa stole. What it's doing inside of this one thing that just happens to be left in this apartment is incredibly lucky and beyond me.
Yep.
But cool. Okay. One down, what,
7 more?
7 more to go? Yeah.
Yeah, if they're all 50K, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So Nancy starts to think about this a little bit, and she concludes that in this rush to leave, if she was rushed to leave, Lisa probably must have taken the curtain rod and shaken it out to get all of her papers inside, because assumingly she had the other 7 in there as well, and this one just happened to get stuck, and she was in such a hurry that she didn't have time to realize it was stuck and just put it back. But then they start to look at this bearer bond a little bit further, and they realize that inside is this strange little tube. And inside that tube is a shipping manifest. Or at least it looks like a shipping manifest, because they start looking at it some more, and it looks like it's listing some tech equipment that's owned by the Malahini Corporation. And they notice that it's actually the same manufacturer for the bug that they found in Nancy's car.
Right.
Same manufacturer as what's listed on all the rest of the stuff on this equipment list. So we have no idea why Lisa would have this, but somehow we know that the Malahini Corporation is involved with this disappearance now. So something is going on with this corporation, but we just don't know how they fit in. So Nancy and Ned go back to the front desk where the clerk has already returned from Bess and George's little distraction or whatever. And we ask, have you seen Lisa? And it turns out he sure has, actually. She actually only just checked out of here about an hour ago, and it seemed like she was in a big hurry. So they ask about her, who paid for the room, and it turns out that the room was paid for by with a credit card in the name of the Malahini Corporation.
That's so weird.
Why is this corporation so intent on helping Lisa run away?
Yeah.
Very strange. We also learned that some movers came right after Lisa left, and they took all of her stuff with them in some sort of moving van. So Nancy and Ned leave to go call the moving company, and Nancy actually pretends to be Lisa and is or actually, what does she say?
She pretends to be Lisa and asks that, the movers come back because they left
they
the
forgot
couch or something.
Yeah.
And they were we can't, you have to call the people who put the, who hired them, because Lisa apparently didn't hire them, and learns that it was the Malahini Corporation who hired
So
them.
that's how she figures out that they also paid for the moving company.
Yeah.
So who is this corporation? Why are they so involved, and what are they? Because we don't actually know what they do. And Nancy is getting pretty fed up with the situation at this point, and is all right, we need to go back and talk to Alice, because we need to know more about what is going on exactly with the bank. So we go over to Alice's home, and we are invited to stay for dinner, actually, along with Ross Rafferty and then Mr. Kaimasaki, who is the bank president, and Ann Sorensen, who is, I guess, the bank vice president, who we didn't meet before, but she is here now. There's a really weird moment, actually, where Nancy says something about her friend George, and Anne is oh.
No, George is there. George is there.
That's right. Yeah, sorry.
And she's oh, you're a girl? And George is yeah, you got a problem with that? What?
It's just
really
this very
weird.
awkward moment that Anne doesn't believe that George could ever be a woman, or a woman could ever have the name George, but very strange. So we have dinner, and then about halfway through dinner, Nancy asks Alice what the Malahini Corporation is, and everyone at the table kind of just like turns and looks at her, very surprised to hear her asking about this. Turns out they are a rival corporation, and they seem to be kicking up a little bit of panic amongst the Windward Bancorp stockholders. Turns out the bank is not in the best financial position right now, and if the stockholders have to dump their stocks for any reason, the Malahini people could end up buying the stocks and then would be able to essentially take over the company if they're able to buy up enough stocks. So obviously Alice is very concerned about this, and all of her people are very concerned about this because it could spell a lot of trouble for them. But why is this relevant to Lisa, though? Like, what is going on here?
Seriously.
So the next day, Nancy goes back to her police friends, the ones that we met at the school, and we ask them to pull up tax information, anything that they can find about the Malahini Corporation. So they do, and they basically can't find any information. There's very, very little information at all. All that they can see is that the company is registered to an overseas organization out of the Cayman Islands. We get a very, very long explanation about why the Cayman Islands is significant and why basically a company would want to go there. But basically, obviously, you can like hide tax trails or whatever, paper trails. You can hide it more easily if you do things out of the Cayman Islands because they are not obligated to report things to the IRS the same way that other countries may have rules or whatever about it. So effectively, we are not able to track them down based on the information from the tax records. So Nancy's discouraged, and they decide that they are going to split up a little bit to try to do some canvassing. Nancy and Bess decide that they are going to go to the beach to interview some surfers to see if maybe anybody in town just happened to see Lisa anywhere around. And then I think Ned and George are going to go do something else. But first we're going to go to the beach, and they're having a great time talking to surfers on the beach, or at least Bess is enjoying herself. But eventually they do meet somebody who's like, yeah, I did actually see Lisa this morning. And so we ask him a little bit more about this, and he says that the surfer was out like surfing, and from his board on the water he could see some burly guy and a brown-haired woman with a young woman, and they all seem to be looking for something on the beach. And they're doing this for a little while until the man just starts yelling at the girl and grabs her. And then he goes around like knocking over trash cans on the beach and like gets really aggressive and a little bit violent. But then the brown-haired woman comes back over, calms him down a little bit, and then they put Lisa into a car, and then all three of them drive away together.
This is a plot hole.
Yeah.
I just realized.
Yeah. And so the surfer says that he could tell Lisa was like a little bit in distress at this moment, so he starts paddling his board back in, but by the time he gets back to the beach, the car has already driven away. So Nancy thinks about this, and she thinks that Lisa must have originally been approached by the Malahini Corporation, who must have promised her that they would help her get to San Francisco. Why they would be interested in doing this, I don't know. But maybe they wanted something from Lisa, and now they're not getting it. Perhaps those bearer bonds, maybe, because obviously anybody can cash those in. They don't have a name on them, so it's pretty easy to just take that from her if they really wanted to. And it seems that now Lisa is being held captive by them,
Right.
Possibly because she can't come up with this $50,000 bearer bond that she left
Maybe,
in the apartment, or in the curtain rod in the apartment. So afterwards, Nancy and Bess head down the boardwalk back to the marina, and Nancy realizes that they are being followed by the same Hawaiian shirt guy that they originally saw outside Lisa's apartment, and in the parking garage as well with Boomer. So she goes to a phone booth and she calls George to explain the situation, and they formulate a little bit of a plan. So basically, Nancy wants to lead Hawaiian shirt guy to the boat and then have George like hiding out nearby to follow him as soon as he leaves. But Nancy's really nervous about this because she doesn't want George to take any risks. But George is like, it'll be fine. Let's just go for it. And so George agrees and she goes and hides out. And then Nancy and Bess head back to the boat. They get back to the boat, they get on board, and then Nancy tries to like sneak around the side and like peek out the window to see if she can see what's going on with George. But George is talking to the man. They're fully having a conversation out here, not playing it safe, by the way. George is not supposed to let this guy even see her. But she is able to listen into their conversation a little bit here. And George asks him, like, oh, hey, I see you're like wandering around here. Do you need any help or anything? Are you looking for somebody? She's just playing it innocent, right? And the man says, oh, I'm a private detective and I'm looking for a girl named Nancy Drew. And she's supposed to be here with some other woman named Bess and then 2 guys named Ned and George. Have you seen like a group of like 2 young women and 2 young men? And George thinks that this is absolutely hilarious. And she is going to play along because she just thinks that this is so funny. And so, of course, she pretends not to know Nancy. And she's like, no, I've lived here for years.
Yeah.
I'm that boat just at the other end of the dock right there. I'm out here all the time. I've never heard of anybody named Nancy Drew. I've also not seen these people that you've described. You must have the wrong place, basically.
I think she does say something funny about like, oh, well, she might know the George guy. Is he a surfer or something? Like,
no, she says, she's like, I do think that I've seen this George man walking around here. And he's kind of a hunk, honestly. Yes. So. that honestly was really funny. We might actually have to read that scene later just because it really was pretty clever.
Well, I think it's so funny to me because it's so clearly part of like the queer coding of George because she's like so gleeful about the fact that this guy is like mistaken her gender identity. And so it's like she, and like talking about herself as if she were handsome. Like, I'm like, oh, like George is maybe actually a guy. Like, like George is trans. Like,
I love this. I feel like maybe we did this a little bit in Shadow Ranch where that cowboy was kind of giving George a hard time about being named George. But other than that, I don't really feel like we see this kind of like them talking about it this way, It's never like George is trying to do some sort of tongue-in-cheek joke or anything. She's never trying to play along with it. It's always like, no, it's just George. Don't call me Georgia. And then that like we never expand on it ever.
Well, and I love this too because it also gives George like an actual personality. Like I feel like a lot of the times George is just kind of relegated to making mean jokes to kind of like keep dialogue moving or to like try to, get some comic relief in there, which was like at Bess's expense usually. Right. But like this is like not just like her caring about or like being actually funny and like tricking people, like being mischievous in that way, but also like her risk taking here and like her like putting herself out there and like being a little bit more impulsive or reckless in like just talking to this guy and not holding back, even though she told Nancy that she was going to. Like, I love that about George. Like, can we please have more of this George? Please. It's
really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
We really don't get enough nice George scenes. No. Truly.
No. Yeah.
This was good. And this was clever too. Yeah.
Yeah.
George is fun in this one. I liked it a lot. Yeah. Anyway, so she pretends not to know Nancy, and the guy just kind of gives up, gets in his car, and leaves, but not before George is able to take down his license plate number. Thank you very much, George. Afterwards, Nancy goes back to the bank to talk to Jack, who is this... I don't even remember who Jack is. He's like an accountant for the bank or whatever. He's really helpful.
I just call him Helpful Jack.
Helpful Jack. I like it. But basically, he gives Nancy a little bit more information on how a company would theoretically use a bank account in the Cayman Islands to dodge taxes in the U.S. Basically, just how things are set up in the Cayman Islands law-wise with reporting and everything. He also explains that because of all of this, there's really not a way to know where the company is actually run from. Right. Of course, it is incorporated in the Cayman Islands, but there's nothing stopping them from being physically in Hawaii and having all this going on as well. So yeah, I feel like a lot of adults kind of just know that from pop culture anyway, but we give the full explanation in the book. But anyway, at the bank, Nancy decides that she is going to call her detective friend, one of the police officers, and have him run the plates from Hawaiian Shirt Guy's car. So he does, and he says that he only knows that the owner is from a rental company. And because they own it, he can't know who rented it without getting a subpoena, which means like a court order and all that stuff.
Thank you. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I appreciated this so much. It wasn't just like, yeah, here, I know everything about it. It was like, oh no, actually it's a rental car. So because they own it, like I can't just tell you who's driving it. I can't call the rental car company and ask them because I'd have to have a subpoena to get that information. Right. Like, thank God, like accuracy in like police like work. Like I love it so much. Finally.
So yeah, we can't get the rental company's records, obviously, because we don't have the grounds to do a subpoena right now, whatever. But Helpful Jack has overheard this conversation and apparently knows the owner of the rental company anyway. So he just calls him up and like makes up this fake story about needing the name of the person who rented out the car and like basically like guilts him into it. It's like, oh, we had like an issue and like I just need to know the name or whatever. But he does actually get the information, and we learn that it is an agency called the Apex Detective Agency. So Nancy assumes that the Malahini Corporation has hired this Apex Detective Agency to either look for Lisa or follow Nancy, and or both, maybe. And Nancy decides for some reason that she needs to go find this office alone.
Yeah.
And even says something to herself like, I'm not going to bother my friends with this until I know for sure. So I'm going to go check it out. And then if it looks suspicious, I'll go get them and we'll come back here together. Safety first, dumb. Whatever, I guess. Sure. But she does. She's able to find the address in Yellow Pages, goes there. But unfortunately, as she's turning around to leave, an arm comes around and grabs her and chloroforms her.
Of course, it's not going to be files without one instance of chloroforming happening. Yeah. So, yes. Okay.
Of course.
Obligatory chloroform moment, everyone. Here it is. When Nancy wakes up, she's in the backseat of a car. She's brought to this fancy house, and her kidnapper, who she looks at, we realize is actually not Hawaiian shirt guy. This confused me for a really long time because I thought it was Hawaiian shirt guy. It's not Hawaiian shirt guy. It is some other rando guy. He pulls her out and brings her around to the back of this fancy house, and she sees 3 people. 2 of them she recognizes.
Sorry.
That's what I thought at first, because I thought it was Hawaiian shirt guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it didn't make sense based on what's about to happen. But because it's not, I think it still makes sense. But it's still not, I don't know. It's maybe not a plot hole, but I think it's definitely something that they had to cut information out of because there's not, it's just like a weird situation. So
how did they know she was at the Apex offices to come get her from there?
I think they had someone else following her.
Oh.
Yeah. Because whoever this random guy is that kidnapped her.
This was also totally unnecessary, but we will get there.
Yes. So she recognized 2 of these people. One of them is the president of the bank, and the other one is the vice president of the bank. It's Mr. Kaimansaki and Miss Amy Sorensen. So the other guy she guesses to be this guy she's heard of from Alice named Lester Jarman. Apparently he used to be Alice's dead husband's old business partner or something, and he's retired now, but I guess he still has like a lot of pull with the company, maybe. I don't know. It's really random. Nancy incorrectly assumes that these people are the Malahini Corporation and like says so. It's like, haha, like now I know who you are kind of a thing. And Lester, who clearly seems to be like in charge of the other 2, they have a really weird dynamic going on, denies this and says that we only kidnapped you, Nancy, because you were making too much noise. Like we just wanted to kidnap you and bring you here to tell you to be more careful.
I would have quit right here and now. I'm like, I'm off the job. If y'all are going to treat me this way while I'm working to find your boss's child.
That's the thing is, like, they didn't even hire Nancy. Like, right. Alice Faulkner hired Nancy. So, like, what the heck do they have to do with this? And why are they, like, policing Nancy's actions? It's really weird. Mm-hmm. Also, this is never really resolved. We don't really get answers to that. We don't know why.
They could have told her to be more careful without chloroforming her and assaulting her. Anyway.
Or, like, it would have made more sense to me if, like, Mr. Kaimansaki and Miss Amy Sorensen, who were at that dinner with them, brought it up as, like, a topic of discussion as like, hey, maybe you should think about being more careful, Nancy. And then we wouldn't have to have this whole weird side plot scenario, which really doesn't amount to anything. Anyway, but we'll keep going. So this Lester Jarman guy tells Nancy that he actually hates the Malahini Corporation because they're targeting his bank, and apparently he thinks whoever it is, like whoever is actually this Malahini Corporation, is an insider in Windward Bancorp, because they would have somehow had to have heard about their financial troubles in order to know that they could be like leveraging this situation, which I guess makes sense. And I guess he's just so offended by the fact that it's like an insider or someone that he would know or have worked closely with that he really wants to bring them down. But then it's like, why are you kidnapping Nancy then? Like, shouldn't you want her to be taking these risks and quote unquote making a bunch of noise so that you can figure out this situation? Whatever. He does eventually let Nancy go, but he's like a creepy guy. He's weird. He like says gross things, kind of like, oh, I'll be watching, just like weird stuff. And Nancy is like still suspicious of him and Kaiman and Sorensen, who are with him. So I don't know. It's a weird situation.
He also makes a joke about like, I could be them for all you know.
Yeah. And it's why would you say that? Yes, why? Anyway, the next morning, Nancy and her friends do go back to the Apex Detective Agency and surround the building. Her new cop friends are like going to go in and try to talk to this private detective guy and find out why the Malahini Corporation hired him. But he ends up trying to escape via an alleyway. Nancy ends up clocking him with a trash can lid, which is like the second instance of a trash can lid actually taking someone out in this, which is funny.
That should have been one of the words. Trash can lids.
And then Ned tackles him this time, so another tackling instance as well. When the cops and Nancy and friends surround him, he does decide to fess up, and they all go into his office to get his story. He admits that he was hired by the Malahini Corporation, but they only ever contacted him by letter, so he's never met them face to face. They only asked, like, via letter that he try to locate Lisa, which of course he was unsuccessful at, but then a couple days later asked that he follow Nancy around. So after this conversation, Nancy is back in the car with her friends, and she's like working out this timeline. So on Friday, Lisa visits the safety deposit box, and because she's unhappy, she sees an opportunity, steals the contents, and runs away. Then directly after that, the bank notices the theft and notifies Alice, who called Nancy to investigate. And then simultaneously, the Malahini Corporation must have sent a letter to this guy at the Apex Detective Agency. So how did they know to do that, right? It must have been because they either are or are informed by someone at the bank who knew about this as it was happening. But then why go after Lisa? Well, Nancy has a theory about this too, because remember the shipping manifest that she found from the Malahini Corporation with the bearer bond in Lisa's apartment? Well, what if the Malahini Corporation, because it's very likely someone at the bank, what if they hid documents inside Diana's safety deposit box? And Lisa, when she stole the contents, didn't realize immediately that it was in there. So once she did take everything out and finally look at it, she saw that document. And because she's smart enough to like realize exactly who the Malahini Corporation is, maybe because of this document or these documents, whatever, that's reason enough for the Malahini Corporation to go after her. One, but two, because she wanted to get to San Francisco, she may have tried to use the documents as leverage to get to the Malahini Corporation to help her get out of Hawaii. And so that's why the private eye couldn't find her. And the Malahini Corporation told him to switch gears and follow Nancy because Lisa had already approached the Malahini Corporation herself. Right. So this all is starting to make sense. This is all starting to line up a little bit. Unfortunately now, of course, it seems like the Malahini Corporation has the upper hand over Lisa somehow, and they are keeping her captive, right? So
this whole thing's so sad. Yes. Poor Lisa. Just being in a situation in the first place to get to a point where she's desperate enough to run away like this.
Yeah. But it's also so crazy too, because she is such like a hashtag girl boss. I mean, like, she's so incredibly competent, it seems like.
She really is.
She has her pilot's license. She's stealing, like, she's planning all of this stuff. Like, she has a serious plan. Then she goes to the Malahini Corporation, is like, hey, you can help me get out of here. Like, I know who you are, you know, kind of a thing. But unfortunately, like, is just not informed enough. Unfortunately, isn't able to work this situation quite to her favor, and is really ended up getting like the short end of the stick, kind of in all regards here. So it's sad, but it's also like she's clearly such a smart girl and like so incredibly competent that like she doesn't deserve this. You know, not that the people who aren't smart and competent would deserve it, but like, God, like, you just really wish she had the satisfaction of being able to get out of it herself, you know? Oh, well. But so unfortunately, very soon after that, Nancy and friends visit the bank, and they learn from Diana and Alice, who were there, that Lisa's ex-stepdad, Rafferty, was sent a ransom note for Lisa, which included one of her gold bracelets as proof that they did actually have her. So the ransom note tells Rafferty, Sorensen, Lester, Kaimansaki, and the Faulkners that they need to sell their shares in Woodward Bancorp to the Malahini Corporation, or they will never see Lisa again. So this is very scary. It's suddenly gotten a lot more intense. So while everyone is arguing, Nancy pulls a distraught Diana aside. She's upset, and she apparently has now started to realize how much she regrets prioritizing her like artwork over her relationship with her daughter. And Nancy comforts her and, you know, asks, "Hey, what did you usually keep in your safety deposit box?" And Diana says, "Well, actually, like, I don't really even know," which is like,
must be nice.
Must be nice. Because, you know, her father left her a lot of money when he passed away, or just like a lot of like random stuff. And so when she was married to Ross, Kaimansaki managed both her and Ross's finances, like, you know, from the bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now that she's divorced, Amy Sorensen from the bank manages her finances. So she said, like, we'll talk to Amy. Amy will know what was in there. And so Nancy is starting to form an idea here of who actually might all be behind this. So she hatches a plan. First, she calls her detective friends on the Honolulu Police Department force, and they set her up with a wire. And then Nancy calls Lester. She tells him that she is about to nail the Malahini Corporation, and since he hates them so much, she thought he'd like to know. She tells him that she has this bearer bond, and on it has some kind of like water damage on it, which is not true. But she says on the back there was a message, but now that she can't read it because of this water damage. There is no message on the back of this bearer bond. This is all fake. This is Nancy's
so
plan.
clever. This is so smart.
But Lester has no way of knowing that, right? So Nancy says, okay, well, I'm going to take this bearer bond to the police to have them look at it, because they can use like an ultraviolet light so that we can like read what the message actually says. And hopefully, you know, it's some message from Lisa that can help us find her. And Nancy is banking, no pun intended, on Lester.
No pun intended. That was good.
On Lester spreading the news about this. And obviously, whoever at the bank is the Malahini Corporation will want to get their hands on this bearer bond before Nancy can read that fake message, right? So Nancy is essentially making herself a target so that she'll get snatched, and the police, using the wire, can follow her and nab the bad guys, right?
Brilliant.
Yes. So while she's explaining this to everyone and how she thinks whoever is behind this will try to persuade her to bring the bond somewhere else before going to the police station as like a setup, the phone rings for Nancy. And it is Miss Amy Sorensen.
So Nancy answers the phone, and Amy starts telling her how she thinks that it's really important that the bearer bond be kept safe until the police have a chance to examine it. And so she suggests, like, why don't you just come to the bank and we will lock it away in the bank vault. And that way nobody can mess it up or steal it or anything until the police have a chance to come get it or whatever. I guess she thinks it's more risky for Nancy to drive straight to the police station than it is for Nancy to just drive straight to the bank. Whatever. Makes no difference, but whatever. So Nancy, because she wanted this to happen, right? Like, she knows that this is a setup. She instantly agrees. She's like, great. And Amy says, don't you worry. Actually, I have a chauffeur who I will send to come get you and the Barabon, and they will come get you from the marina and take you to the bank. So Nancy goes, and she just like kind of waits outside the marina for the car to arrive. And it does. And Amy is in the car, which is weird because Amy said that she was too busy or something to come help with this. So that's why she was sending the chauffeur. But Amy's in the car, whatever. And she asks to see the Barabon, and Nancy shows it to her. And obviously there's no message on the back. So now Amy knows that she has been caught.
Yeah.
Nancy explains that she knew it was her because of what Diana told her about who had access to the safety deposit box and everything, but also because at the beginning, when Amy made that weird comment to George about having thought that she was going to be a guy. And also, the private detective also thought that George was going to be a guy. So, obviously, Amy had told the private detective about Nancy and her friends, and that's why. Well, both Ross Rafferty and Mr. Kaimisaki had met George the same day that they'd gotten into town or whatever. So if it had been them, obviously they would have known that George was a girl.
Right.
So it had to be Amy. Process
Could only
elimination.
have been her. Yeah.
So now Amy is going to kidnap Nancy and take her to where she's hiding Lisa. It turns out that it's like this airplane hangar that is being watched by, I guess, her friend or assistant or something.
I don't know who this person is.
Her name's Marilee, and she's just been like watching Lisa for Amy while Amy's running around doing all this conniving stuff. So they leave Lisa and Nancy alone together for a minute when they get there. I don't know what Amy and Marilee are doing or whatever, but Nancy explains who she is to Lisa and says something to Lisa that Lisa knows that she can trust Nancy. But she decides that now is the best opportunity to hide her wire in the room where they're like holding Lisa. I guess there's like a couch or something in this room. So she takes the wire off and like...
This is so frustrating.
Yes, it is, because the whole point is so that the police can track where you are.
Yes.
But it's actually good that she does this. She like stashes it under the couch or whatever, and as soon as Amy comes back, she searches both of them. And so it's good that she wasn't wearing the wire, I guess, in that case. But now how are the police going to be able to find you? How are your friends going to be able to come get you? Like, that's the only reason you felt safe in setting yourself up as the bait was because you knew that they'd be able to come get you? Whatever. So now Amy and what is the chauffeur's name? Like Lou or something?
I don't know, but I just thought it was hilarious that he was like actually like such an evil guy. I just started calling him the evil chauffeur.
Yes.
Because like Nancy like in the limousine, like because Amy had said that like her chauffeur, whatever his name was going to be coming to pick her up. Nancy gets in the car and refers to him as that name that Amy had called him earlier. He's like, that's not actually my name. I'm this guy. And because Nancy like asks him for help, was like, well, like chauffeur, turn the car around. Let's go back. And he's like, I work for Amy. Like, I'm so evil and mean and I want you to die too. Like,
was it like Ronald or something initially?
I don't know.
And then he's like, my name's actually Lou, as though that is like the reveal that he's evil.
Yeah. I don't know. It was
I'm evil because the name was fake at first, as though it matters.
It is
Whatever.
Lou. It's Lou. It's like Lew Lou. That's weird. Yeah.
So Amy, Lou, her evil chauffeur, and then Marley come back. They handcuff the girls and then stick them in a helicopter? Whatever. They have a helicopter waiting on standby. And the pilot of the helicopter is like, whoa, what is this? I did not agree to whatever is going on here. Something weird is going on here. And they hold him at gunpoint. And the pilot's like, well, in that case, yes, whatever you say, yes, ma'am. So the pilot is instructed that he is going to fly them over to the Big Island over an active volcano. And I don't remember the volcano's name, but we have mentioned this volcano previously in the book, and we know that it is active and very, very dangerous.
Yep.
Let's see. So, again, Nancy is handcuffed, but she manages to find some, like, metal thing on the ground or something. She manages to find some small, like, pin or something to use to, like, pick the lock behind herself, by the way.
Behind her back!
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm talking about. How? This is wild. Without the use of her hands. It's like a metal piece like on the wall of the helicopter. And so she's just, this is next level. Next level A CIA intelligence operative could not do this.
No.
They wish that they were Nancy Drew.
Oh my gosh.
Wild.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so basically, evil chauffeur is now in charge here. Amy and Marilee are just kind of like chilling, watching all this
Amy isn't on the helicopter, by the way.
Oh, I thought she was. Okay, no, it is just the pilot, Lou, the evil chauffeur, and Marilee.
Yes.
So Marilee's just sitting there, I guess, just watching all this go down, and the pilot is terrified, even though he doesn't want to be involved. And Lou, the evil chauffeur, like gets up to drag Nancy out of the helicopter because he opens the door and is like, "All right, time to go."
Yeah.
And Nancy uses this as her, like, you know, surprise opportunity attack. He doesn't know she's got the handcuffs off, so she surprises him, attacks him, and then they get into an absolute brawl in the helicopter. And Lou has his gun. The gun actually ends up going off while Nancy's like trying to wrangle it out of his hand, and he like slams his arm down onto like the ground of the helicopter or something, right? And at this moment the gun goes off. And the pilot like screams, stands up, and Nancy sees like a pool of blood in his abdomen, just like growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And he just like slumps over the controls. And so now the helicopter is just like swinging around wildly over this open volcano with the door open.
Yeah.
And Lou just slides right out the door of the helicopter into the volcano.
Yep.
And Nancy, because of the angle of his helicopter, starts to slide out with him. And she is able to, she does actually fall out of the helicopter.
Right.
But manages to midair grab onto the helicopter skid, the like landing thing or whatever, and like just grabs on and hangs on. And then eventually like some rope, I guess, that's like tethered inside the helicopter at some place is dangling down, because the helicopter again is like flying in circles sideways. It is dangling down enough that she's able to grab onto it and pull herself back into the helicopter.
Okay. Do you remember the scene in Charlie's Angels, at the end of Charlie's Angels, where they are on the helicopter and it's like got missiles attached to it or something, and I think it's Drew Barrymore is on one side and Cameron Diaz is on the other. They're sitting on the skids of this helicopter, trying to disarm the missiles on it as like Lucy Liu is like flying the helicopter. Like, this is literally the end of Charlie's Angels. Like, I wasn't exaggerating at the beginning. This is a scene from Charlie's Angels. I know that movie came out after this book, and part of me wonders if maybe they weren't a little bit inspired by this Nancy Drew file to write that scene, because
it's pretty awesome. Pretty intense. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So Lisa is still inside the helicopter handcuffed, and Marilee is like seatbelted into her seat, and she's just sitting there screaming in terror, absolutely useless to be evil or helpful in this case. But Nancy starts yelling at her, like, give me the keys to the handcuffs right now. She manages to it's on like a necklace, so Nancy just like rips it off of her neck. Unhandcuffs Lisa, and then Lisa, the helicopter flying expert, saves the day. She immediately is able to get into like the co-pilot seat of the plane and ends up like piloting this thing back to the ground safely. It's absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
She saves everyone, and then Nancy is able to get on the intercom and have the paramedics meet them at the airport or whatever, so the pilot's going to be okay.
Yes.
But yeah, so they get back down to ground and they are safe. Oh my gosh, that was really intense. So the next day, Amy just goes into work unaware that Nancy and Lisa have survived her little plot or whatever. She goes to the bank office, and Nancy is just there waiting for her to arrive. And then, of course, her police friends are also there, and there's a very satisfying arrest, and Nancy explains all of Amy's crimes to the rest of the bank officers and everything. And so she is caught and taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, we have our nice little wrap-up scene at the boat. I guess Bess and George are off maybe shopping or something like
shopping.
that. But Ned and Nancy are there at the yacht, and Alice Faulkner comes by, and she tells Nancy that she, Diana, and Lisa have all been reunited now, and they have decided that the three of them are going to go on a round-the-world cruise to try to reconnect and heal their family relationship or whatever, and just try to make things all good with them again. And Nancy and Ned are like, oh, well, I guess in that case, we'll try to pack up and be out of here soon then, since, this is your yacht and you're leaving. Yeah. And she's like, no, I would never imagine it. You know what? Stay for another week. Why don't you, take the yacht out? And, here's the keys and, go boat it around Hawaii if you want to. And so Ned's like, hey, Nancy, what do you think that the view's like in Honolulu? And she's like, well, let's go find out. Yeah. And then the end. So...
Oh my goodness. Wow. Gosh.
And that's it.
That's it.
Lisa.
Good job, everybody. It's just such a complicated story. Yeah. It's a little bit too complicated for it to be enjoyable. It made my head hurt a little bit trying to think about it and figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the action was very satisfying.
Definitely.
Especially, I am here for any book in which Nancy gets to beat people up.
Yes.
100%. 100%. But just a little bit too unbelievable, and all of it was a little bit hard to understand, that it just didn't really hit, for me. Didn't really hit.
Plot holes too.
Yeah. And also, I mean, part of, I don't know, Nancy being so uber competent is really fun to watch or read, but it's just not quite Nancy Drew.
Right.
There is not enough of her being a teenage girl, and not necessarily being dumb or being ditzy or anything like that, right? That's not Nancy, but in situations in which a teen girl might find themselves, being not taken seriously by the police or by your employer or your employer's friends or coworkers, right? So but literally she walks into the bank for the first time and Ross goes to have her arrested because he thinks that she's manipulating Alice. And it's how do you think an 18-year-old girl is manipulating this 60-year-old basically billionaire woman? How exactly? It just doesn't really, it's
no.
Really, would someone think that about Nancy? No, they wouldn't.
No.
And it doesn't make sense to me that Nancy is able to beat up this clearly large framed criminal man at the mall.
Yeah.
I understand she's trained. I understand that she can get off a few good hits and probably escape a situation. But the fact that she beats him up, chases him, beats him up again to the point where he surrenders, that's just a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Too unrealistic, Yeah. That it didn't seem like I was reading Nancy Drew. It seemed like I was reading a spy novel or something.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, is fun and cool and enjoyable. It just doesn't seem like Nancy Drew,
I could have used less of the police just inherently trusting her.
Yeah.
We needed a little bit more of not adversarial necessarily, but her, them being skeptical of her and her trying to prove herself a little bit more, or even them being condescending and sexist towards her, because that also fits very well a lot of the time, unfortunately. Yeah.
I do appreciate this book as being fully on the other side of the spectrum of Nancy Drew books, though, because I feel like we get so many Pollyanna, sweet little innocent mysteries that this one feels so far in the opposite direction. It's really dark, really violent. Nancy does a lot of really intense stuff, which is just so opposite to some of the mystery stories that I appreciated as being a marker of okay, well, this is what it looks like with Nancy not being that at all. And really what we want is we want a happy middle in between those things. And
absolutely.
So, yeah. So I appreciate it for showing me what that would be like. I just didn't, it's just not quite right, Yeah.
It's good that there was a lot of investigating, but it was just okay, going here to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. It's never really just stop and think about what's going on. I feel a lot of the other stories, if it had been any other book, we would have taken a chapter where we stopped investigating and we just went and did some touristy thing in Hawaii.
Yeah.
I don't know how appropriate that would be because there is kind of a time crunch in this one. It would have made Nancy probably look
Right.
a little silly to go do
Yeah.
something like that. But I don't feel like we got really any of the touristy aspects of Hawaii or really got any characterization of Hawaii beyond there's a volcano and some
That's so
palm
true.
trees. Yeah.
Yeah, the only real, like, I mean, it's not even really Hawaii moment, but they were, like, talking about it. It's, like, at the very beginning when, like, Bess and George are swimming in Alice Faulkner's pool for some reason, which is also weird. It's like, yeah, you're here to investigate the disappearance of her granddaughter, and you're just swimming in her pool, and she seems totally fine with it. She's like, let them enjoy their swim while you and I go talk in the next room, Nancy. It's like,
okay.
really weird. And also it's like, as you being like a guest in someone else's home to investigate the disappearance of their granddaughter, it's like, let's jump in the pool.
Yay.
You guys, read the room. Like, no.
Oh, gosh.
No. Also, like, you're literally staying on our yacht. You can swim in the ocean anytime you want. Like, maybe now is not the time for that. Like, maybe have some tact, ladies.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But we should talk about how awful all of these people are. Not the Drew crew.
Oh my gosh.
But Alice,
the Faulkner
Diana,
company people. Yeah.
Ross. Every single one of them is horrible. First of all, Alice being like, oh, I need to take custody of Lisa because she clearly hasn't been raised well. And it's like, I know that she and her mother don't have a good relationship, and that's obvious. And I'm sure that Alice knows that to a certain extent. But it does seem to be a little bit about money for her. It definitely seems like the reason why she believes that Lisa isn't being raised well, because she talks more about Diane taking her to live in some dinky rundown apartment. She doesn't talk about Lisa and Diana, whatever her name is, not being close. She doesn't talk about Lisa being troubled or anything like that. She just talks about the fact that Diana took her, and because she does talk a little bit about how Diana like had a lot of marriages. And so I think maybe that is part of it too, like her mother's like, I guess, relationship, quote unquote, instability. I wouldn't necessarily call it that, but I think that's what Alice is like alluding to, you know? And so, but also Lisa is 16 years old at this point. It's like, if you wanted to provide this quote unquote stable, wealthy upbringing for her, it's a little bit late. Like, there's not a whole lot you can do at this point. What are you going to do? Raise her in Texas for another 2 years? Maybe. I mean, you still have to file for custody and go through all of that process, which could take, I mean, a long time.
All 2 of those years.
All 2 of those years. But like, you know, say it takes 6 months, you're only going to have a year really with her in Texas. So like, why? Like, what's the plan there, lady? It just truly seems like a power play over her daughter because she's mad at her daughter, which is gross behavior.
Yeah, when did these problems start? Because is this a brand new thing that we're just mad about this recent apartment change? And so, because that seems like a relatively small fix, but if we've had like actual issues for years now, then what have you been doing this whole time? Just sitting by and letting it happen? Yeah. Not great.
And I understand that, like, this whole, like, runaway situation is a bit of a catalyst for her, but it's, like, too little too late. Like, like, sucks. Sucks to suck. You know? Sorry, you missed your chance. So, so Alice is not grand in any regard. Also, like, we haven't even really brought up the fact how she has all of her money and continuing to like do all these like real estate investments or whatever for her husband, which is of course morally and culturally problematic. So not great interpersonally with your family, not great business wise, not great like society wise. So okay, Alice. And then we have Diana. And I think Diana honestly gets a lot of flack that is kind of undeserved. I mean, I know that she is not close with her daughter, and certainly they have a bad relationship, and I can definitely understand why Lisa wanted to run away. But yeah, no, like she's really kind of shit-talked by her mom and like makes her seem like she's some kind of lazy, like flighty, like horrible, like person or whatever. And then when we finally meet Diana, it's like, oh no, actually she's fine. I mean, kind of
Yeah.
fine. Like, she's a clearly really successful artist. She can seemingly support herself and her daughter just fine. Like, she has like a multi-story apartment. It's not some kind of dinky apartment like Alice was alluding to. It's a normal apartment. And also, she broke up with her probably abusive ex-husband. So go her. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I definitely understand why there's criticism of her and Lisa's relationship, but I do not think Alice has any leg to stand on when it comes to that, because she clearly also doesn't know her daughter.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about, Alice?
And you think it's going to make it better if you take custody or try to file for custody of Lisa?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Ross, we don't even really have to talk about. He's obviously horrible, you know, because of like the abuse and the way that he deals with Nancy and all of it. So we don't even need to waste time on explaining that. But like,
and what's like the driving force behind don't call the police in this situation?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is, okay.
You'd rather word get out and possibly your business have a weird reputation than to do the proper steps to find your not ex-stepchild, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's just crazy to me, too, that none of them did actually call the police. I guess I understand initially why you wouldn't do it, like, right away. But then as soon as Nancy finds out that, like, this Malahini Corporation is involved, which she finds out, like, day one, by the way, honestly, then you need to call the police. Because word has already gotten out to your enemies, clearly, that Lisa's gone. In fact, they were probably orchestrating the whole thing to begin with. So, word's out. Like, word's out and your enemies know. Call the police?
And what universe is this family this rich and refuses to like get some sort of just like private police force to go look for Lisa, and they choose to hire Nancy instead? Not even a licensed detective, not the police, a teenage amateur. No offense to Nancy, like I know that we need an excuse for her to be on this case in the first place, but really, y'all are not making good faith efforts to find this girl.
Yeah.
If anything, it looks like you're sabotaging your own investigation so you don't find Lisa. I don't know.
Yeah. And I understand that Nancy is an old family friend of Alice, so Alice, like, knows about her and everything. But, you would think she would at least hire, like, a ton of private security to help Nancy, even if she had a lot of faith in Nancy and her abilities. Like, yes, you have as much support as you want. Like, I have, like, 50 guys who are on retainer and are going to go around with you to find, you know, my daughter. And then we would have had this solved day one. Day one, we would have had Lisa.
They shut down the airport.
Seriously.
They shut down the airport.
Seriously.
And weren't able... Anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so all these people are horrible.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the plot holes.
Oh, yes. Okay. So... first of all, the beach scene, right? So when they talk to the surfer and and the surfer says he saw Lisa on the beach that morning with the brown-haired girl and that bulky guy, and they were looking for something. And then he got violent, and then the brown-haired lady, who of course now we know was Marilee, like talked him down, and they all got in a car together and left. What the heck was that about?
Yeah.
What were they looking for on the beach? And
the Barabon, surely.
But why would it have been on the beach?
Maybe they were just retracing Lisa's steps, I think they said, to see if maybe she left it somewhere. I don't know why you'd think it'd still be floating around the beach somewhere.
So even if they were looking for that Barabon, who is this guy?
Is it Lou?
Oh.
It's gotta be, right? That's the only other guy it could be.
I forgot about Evil Chauffeur. I forgot. I was thinking, like, wait a second. Is it Lester Jarman?
Oh,
or stepdad Ross Rafferty?
Okay.
Because in my mind, I'm wondering, like, maybe they're more tied into the Malahini Corporation, too. Because, we got Amy for this. But there is no guarantee that she is the only one in this Malahini Corporation. Like, even at the end of it, like, okay, she called Nancy and she set this whole thing up, and maybe she is the one who kidnapped Lisa or whatever, and Lisa doesn't know anybody else. But that doesn't mean that she was the only one involved.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, maybe that man is like, Lester Jarman was my immediate thought, but it could have been anybody. But yeah, you're right. Probably a chauffeur.
Or just some other henchman of hers, but most likely Lou, who we've met, I guess. But yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't you have another one as well?
No, I mean, at first I thought that that when Nancy gets kidnapped and taken to Lester Jarman and those two at that random house or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I originally thought that the person who kidnapped her was Hawaiian Shirt Man from Apex Detective Agency.
I thought it was going to be as well.
And so, I thought so all the way up until they started talking to him later. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Because then, like, if he was the one who was hired by the Malahini Corporation, which we know that he was because of the whole rental car ownership situation, I think, I don't exactly remember. But then they must have been the Malahini Corporation. And so them saying that they weren't the Malahini Corporation didn't make any sense. But it turns out he wasn't the one who kidnapped Nancy. It was just some other random guy, which...
Yeah. It made sense because she was, like, in the building. She sees his office door. It's like, all right, that's it. I know that that's it. I'm going to go now. She turns around, and then she gets chloroformed. So it's like, obviously, this guy was, like, in the hallway or whatever and just came out of nowhere because he saw her coming. It was hiding, and wasn't
some other random
shirt guy. Yep.
Yeah. I don't understand the point of Lester Jarman and why he's hanging out with the president and the vice president of his former bank. I don't understand what that's about and why that was a plot point necessary to confuse us so much. Yeah, because literally he ended up not saying anything. And Nancy could have called anybody at the bank to have them spread this news or information or whatever. So I don't know. Doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
And we did not need to chloroform her to get her there. Like, honestly, if you just called her, she would have come. I'm sorry.
Yes,
but
yes. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I have anything else. Do you?
I think that's all I've got as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, I did think it was an interesting book. Like, I wanted to find out what happened, even though, like, some of it was boring. As like, I wanted to trudge through it to get to the payoff to the reveal. But mostly, I think that's because the character of Lisa is such an interesting character to be.
Yeah.
Any 16-year-old that robs their parent and then disappears, I think is an interesting character. With her pilot's license is interesting in my book. And so I was like, I want to know what happened to Lisa. Did she make it to San Francisco? And all of this is just, that's what I was hoping, is I was hoping that she had made it to San Francisco. She was already out of Hawaii. And all of this other random stuff going on really had nothing to do with her. And she was safe the whole time. And then at the end of it, when they figure out what's happening, she's like, yeah, you guys are idiots. Peace out. Like, you know, like, and then that's it. That's the end. So
I was Malahini the whole time.
Yes. Wouldn't that have been so good though?
Right? Oh, that would have been good.
Because then maybe she wanted to bring down this Windward Bank Corporation because it was tearing apart her family.
Right.
Because, like, it actually was. Like, all of this money and all of it, like, she could be like, you don't deserve it. You don't know how to use your money wisely. Well, you treat everybody like crap. You treated me like crap, so I'm taking you down.
I love it. That's a much better ending.
It is. It is.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, if I would rewrite this book, that's what I would do.
I like it. I like that. I like it a lot. Oh, also, I thought it was funny at the very end when, you know, Lisa saves them all in the helicopter or whatever. Nancy vows to herself. She's like, clearly, just a normal pilot's license isn't enough anymore. I'm going to go get my helicopter license as soon as this is all over.
I forgot. Yes, no. So in this book, we learn that Ned made Nancy get her pilot's license.
Oh, I didn't like that. I was like, there's no. Ned would not have been the reason.
But, like, we learned that Nancy has her pilot's license. And then, at the end, she's like, it's not enough. I need my helicopter pilot's license, too. Yeah. So funny. But anyway, I don't know. I didn't hate it at all. I didn't like it a lot.
Yeah.
You know? So.
The financial stuff was just too much. Yeah. The explanations just went on and on and on and on. And it's like, I don't care. Sorry. But other than that, it was exciting. Just there were some parts that were equally boring.
Yeah. It does feel like there were a lot of unnecessary, like, plot diversions that we didn't need to take. That complicated and made me be like, what am I reading exactly?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Flashlight score?
Oh no, a 3. I think I'm gonna give it a 3.
Yeah.
How about you?
That's what I would give it. I would give it a 3 or maybe a 3.5, but just because of the ending that we get with the helicopter over the active volcano, which is too funny and too good. But yeah, other than that, it wasn't super standout to me. And I didn't really feel like I was reading a Nancy Drew book, you know? So, yeah.
Didn't really feel like we were like in Hawaii, you know?
No. Yeah.
I wanted those Kapu Cave vibes, so we didn't get that, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, we didn't actually, hold the phone. We didn't even meet and talk to any, like, native Hawaiians, did we?
I mean, I think they imply that Hawaiian shirt guy is native Hawaiian, and then there's the surfer guy we meet on the beach, but I don't even know if he's supposed to be, like, Hawaiian or just, like, yeah, we don't know. We had no idea. But, yeah.
I don't even think they got lays or anything stereotypical like that. Like,
you would think that that'd be like the first thing that they do.
Yeah.
Go to some barbecue, see some hula dancers or something, and
No, none of it. None of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, could have used a little
They
bit
don't
more
even
of
go
it, but...
swimming in the ocean. They go swimming in a pool once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Annoying. Yeah. Oh, well.
Wow. Oh, well. Yeah.
On to the next one, Corey.
Oh my gosh.
Because Corey, our next episode is our 100th episode.
Oh my gosh. So we have to do something special for it, of course.
Of course.
And it's also our Christmas episode.
Yes!
Because it's going to come out, I think, just a couple days before Christmas this year. So we are going to do another little holiday-themed book for you.
Mm-hmm. And that is A Crime for Christmas. This is a Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys super mystery.
Yay!
I'm so excited. It is, of course, got our Hardy Boys in it, so I am very excited to see what kind of antics we get up to with them, what kind of fancy drama we are in for. It is a longer one than usual, so I am very excited about that because, of course, they try to pack a little bit more into those super mysteries, and so I will probably have a little bit of a longer episode for our 100th episode, but I am very excited, and I hope that you guys are too.
It's already better than this one just because it's a super mystery. We already know those are really good. So
yeah, let me read the back of it really quick just to wet your whistle and get us excited. Okay.
Yes.
Nancy Drew is in New York to join the Hardy Boys on an important case. They're conducting an intense manhunt for a pair of big-time cat burglars, and they're sure the daring criminal duo will try to scoop up a special prize, the spectacular crown jewels at the Sarcone, which are on display at a museum. Meanwhile, Nancy's friend Bess is enjoying the holiday season with a dream date, a handsome and mysterious guy called John.
As long as his name's not Alan. For some reason, Bess's boyfriends, if their name is Alan, he turns out to be evil.
All the time.
Why?
Okay, but like, also I just think it's hilarious. Like, a mysterious guy named John. The most basic white man name you've ever heard in your life.
Very mysterious.
Anyway, to impress Bess, John takes the gang on a torrid tour of Manhattan's fabulous nightlife. Their fling includes everything from horse-drawn carriages in Central Park to drawn guns at their Park Avenue hotel. Ooh. But with political forces set to blow apart a gala UN dinner, Nancy, Frank, and Joe are suddenly trapped between hot rocks and a royal disaster in A Crime for Christmas. Okay. That was such a convoluted summary. Hot rocks? What does that mean? Royal disaster? Drawn guns at a Park Avenue hotel?
No, this is going to be so exciting.
Horse-drawn carriages? Is this like Die Hard, the Nancy Drew book? Is that what this is?
So. Let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so excited. I hope
Another New York
there's
one?
Some Christmas in there.
Because
I don't know that there are. Yes! Oh my gosh, Aunt Eloise better make an appearance. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
I hope so, yes.
Okay, well, join us next time Regular Drews for Crime for Christmas.
Yes, episode 100. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there,
thanks for listening.